Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Analytics Mindset. Here we're going to go into Cloud Code in action, more particularly how you can take advantage of it. Cloud Code is a very powerful environment, I will say that. And even though I applied mostly through API and other things, it is good to be aware of it. This Anthropic course, as usual, is totally free. And it is available in Anthropic's website. That is always a very good plus because you don't need to pay a penny for it. Now, you will see here that the main part of it is around an hour of video and 15 lectures with one quiz. And you will also get a share on LinkedIn and share on X if you want to. But Cloud Code is very, very focused on what the name says, helping you coding. It helps you in development, it helps you on integration, and it also helps you to understand how Cloud can read files, execute commands, and modify codes in the system because it is not as straightforward as you would think it is. Managing context, for example, is also pretty hard on Cloud Code, and there's a concept of hooks too that you can use for other things and integrate with external services that helps a lot with how things are going to work out. Now, you should have some familiarity with programming. Python is strongly recommended. You will also need an API key. You will need to set that up. You can do it in the free version by creating an access to Cloud Code and then requesting an API key. And a lot of this is going to be in the command line. So you will need to be aware of that and how to use it. Not expert side, but you will still need to know how to use it to some degree. But you can see here some graphs. I'm going to go really quickly, high level. I will not go that much into detail because the course is free, as I said before. But first, you will get a task on where the code is not properly defined. Then you will go into the language model and it will go into an iteration cycle. It first gathers the concept, formulates a plan, and takes an action. And if that action does not work, that in my experience can happen sometimes, it will go ahead and go back to gather context and try another thing. You could use any Cloud Code series of models that are hosted into Anthropic, AWS, or Google Cloud. All of them are available. You also have GitHub integration. You can actually ask Claude to read all your changes in a pull request, assess code quality, performance, or just write a summary report. And when you have very big GitHub repositories, that could help quite a bit. And finally, you can see here how you will go into the coding assistant, and the language model, because the coding assistant is not really the language model. They are very deeply integrated, but they are different parts. You will first go into what code is written in this main Go file. Then the code assistant will tell the language model, what do I want to do? If I read the file, I need to respond with the read file name of the file. Then the language model will you need to read this file. And finally, the coding system will pass to the language model the contents of the file because the actual language model cannot directly read files. That is a big difference here. It is the coding assistant that reads the files for you. Now, into the actual material, we will just go really quickly through it. It goes more in detail onto these parts. We will go into the introduction, and just keeping it high level, you will see it's a very short video. But what is a coding assistant? A coding assistant is a system that allows the language model to actually do programming. There is a very big difference. Think about it this way. Copilot can create actual Python scripts inside Copilot and a virtual environment, but you can also actually access your repository in GitHub case or your local system if you have it set up like that. You can give it an actual message and say, I need you to fix this, I need you to do this, and it will do this reasoning task that you see here. Now, language models, as it says here, can only process and text and return text. That is a very important part and differentiation for Cloud Code. You can actually use them to read commands or to read files or run commands. That's also a very powerful tool that Cloud Code can do. That's why you have the tool use. You will have a request to a code assistant, and it will add this saying, I want to read this file, respond with read file, name of the file. And you will go into Claude tools, more specifically how Claude use it. Um, as you can see, not all models are equally strong using tools, but Claude focuses on that. That's literally their main focus on understanding how to use tools, which tools to use, and in what case. And you can see here again more interaction between the language model and the code assistant here. Now, hard tasks can be used by combining different tasks. Again, you can use commands in the console to search stuff, to do things, to delete files, to move files, to use other things. You can add new tools to Claude Code, and it will adapt as your workflow evolves. And finally, better security because you can navigate code bases without indexing. That means that you can hide certain files and servers. It really depends on what you want to achieve. But that's where the hooks come into place that I will go into a second. Pre-hook and post-hook. Well, you don't want to read the whole thing. You just want to say, hey, I read me this file. I just need the contents of this file. I don't need everything in this regard. But yeah, I will not go that much into detail here because you can set it up by yourself. I really recommend it to do it. But you can see here that you will need to just run some commands. You will need to set it up with Google Vertex or AWS Bedrock, depending on what you need. You will also need to set up your project. They provide you with Node.js. You need Node.js too. You will need project directory and set up a SQL-like database. Now, you can also use the Anthropic API to generate UI components, but you can also get an API key. You don't need to, but it will just generate fake code instead of the real code. You can see here, you can get actually an API key here, and you will place it into your M file. Now you can also add context here. What you can do is saying what I need to accomplish to get this task with the init command. You can scan your code base, create a summary, write all of this to the Claude MD. The MD files are going to be very important because those MD files will help you navigating once you come back to as well. There's three common locations on MD files, as you can see. The Claude MD file, it generates when you start initiate it. It comes to source control and you can share it with others. The Claude local MD shouldn't be shared with anybody. And you have the actual Claude MD. And it's used with all projects in your machine and basically contains two instructions that you want to follow on the projects. So you can actually set up things project at the global level too. You can also add custom instructions by adding to the Claude MD file, and you can just type something here. For example, I want to not use comment on the complex code. I don't want to comment every single part of it. That will give Claude instructions there. And you can also mention a specific part of the file path, includes the file context that you request to Claude. Similarly, you will need to add a list of files, and you can reference files in CloudMD as well. Now, how do we make changes? When we work with Claude, we can do a lot of things. You can start with the planning mode. You will go into the database and say, read more files for my project, create a detailed implementation plan, and show me what you want to do. You also have thinking modes. Claude actually offers them separately, meaning that you won't know which thinking mode it is, but it's going to be doing some thinking. It just depends on what it's doing, although you can also set it up. And here you have planning versus thinking are very separate tasks. On the planning mode, you need a more of a broad understanding. You need multi-step implementations and changes that affect multiple files, while thinking is better for complex logic, debugging very difficult things. Why is this string not being consumed? Maybe it's because the actual input is a number in the function. Or algorithmic challenge. And after that, we will just go really quick into context, into the custom commands. We're going to skip context. You can get the forward slash and get your own custom commands, find the Claude folder, and you can get your own commands, the audit command, commands with arguments, you can get the argument there, and you can run it in the file path as you can see here. You can get a lot of automation, consistency, context, and flexibility here with commands. We saw the MCP server before, but you can extend it. You can extend Claude Code with it too as well by installing the Playwright MCP server, by managing its permissions, and then improving component generation. You can say open the browser, navigate to your application, test a component, and finally, you can do things like instead of generating purple and blue gradients, you can use the prompt to generate your own gradients, your own themes, and your own layouts. That's just an example, but if you are in graphic design, that could help quite a lot. But there's here some other examples that you can do here: database integrations, API testing, system operations, etc. There's also GitHub integration. As we said before, you can set up with install GitHub, and you can basically scan repositories. Say you can actually just mention Claude into issue or pull request, and Claude will analyze the request, execute the task, and respond directly into there. That's a very powerful integration to have. Although obviously you're going to need to have a server running Claude too as well while you're doing that. You can add in the project setup, and again, I won't go that much into this, but you will need an NCP server and give the permissions to. And here are just some best practices here that you start with the default workflow and then customize gradually. You need to be very explicit what tools you want to give the MCP server. Be very careful with those permissions, and consider your project specific needs too. Not all projects need all tools. Now, I will go really high level on under hooks because I don't want to just give you the whole course. That's why the course is here. But you can see here that there is a free to use hook, and then you have the Claude Code reading the file, and then a post to use hook. Hooks allow you to execute code after or before the execution happens between you, Claude Code, and Claude. Because remember, Claude Code and Claude are different, even though they are named very similarly. Pre-tool use, as it says from the name, is when you run a tool before it's called, and post-tool use, it runs after it's called. You can set it up on the global project or project not committed settings, depending on what you need. And pre-tools always runs before it's executed. It will include a matcher that specifies the tool target. Post-tools would run after that. And there is multiple reasons why you will want to do it. You can block the tool call. Let's say that Claude goes into multiple things and decides to read a critical file with your API key, and you don't want Claude to read your API key usually. Maybe you want. It's not a best practice. You can use a pre-tool hook to avoid that, to block Claude, and Claude will get an error message saying something like, you cannot read this because you are not supposed to. Then Claude will just go back and think something else. Post to use hook runs commands you provide, and it's too late to block the code, but you can provide additional feedback to Claude. That's part of it. It's like, think about it as helping Claude improve as well. And here is just some things that you can do with them. You can format the files after Claude edits them, saying, I want this spacing here, I want this here, I want this, that, I want your comments here. Testing, run test after. You can also do that with the post tool. Access control. As we mentioned before, that would be the pre-tool code quality, login and validation. But you can extend a lot on Claude's capabilities using those tools. I will not go that much into detail on defining hooks. You can do that in your own time, but you can do it, and implementation as well. But there is one more thing I want to go around on. You want to be very careful what you do into hooks, and there is a ton of useful hooks actually in TypeScript. You can also avoid query duplication. But again, I will not go that much into detail here on all of these, because the last part I want to go through is the actual Claude called SDK that you can actually run from your own applications and script. You have TypeScript, Python, and the CLI. You can integrate into larger workflows, you can call it, and it is a very powerful integration, as you can see. I prefer Python, but you can look at the three of them, CLI, TypeScript, and Python, depending on what you want to do. And you can run code programmatically. And as we have talked in the past, the main advantage of running something programmatically is that you can do a lot of automation. Instead of a drag and drop or instead of more front end tool, you can do a lot of more customization to code because it's just code at the end of the day. But yeah, that is pretty much it for this. It is a very good course. I recommend it. And seems like vibe coding and a lot of AI programming is going to be the future of all these tools. It is very good to have it as an assistant. For sure, complete the quiz. The quiz is pretty good to understand what's happening. But with that, as always, I hope you have a good time. And please let me know any feedback that you may have. Drop a like, a comment. I always appreciate it. Thank you.